All right, let's get started. I am super excited to share this information with everyone because this is stuff that the average, free diver, scuba diver, spear fisherman really is completely unaware of, especially when you get in this idea of the mechanics or why it is that way, right? You might, find people that say, oh yeah, you're supposed to do Frenzel when you're free diving. And then you say, well, why can't I use Valsalva? I don't know. Well, this is what some guy told me, right? So here's what I know as an instructor. If you all understand, the mechanics behind how Frenzel works, and if you understand why it is that Valsalva doesn't generate enough force and why Frenzel does, I just know from experience it's much easier to learn the technique when you have that really good solid background of what actually is going on. So I'm going to go over a couple things. I'm going to go over what's the difference between the Valsalva method of equalization and the Frenzel method of equalization. I'm going to explain why Valsalva works okay for scuba diving, but it's severely limiting as a free diver. Really you're going to struggle to get past 15 or 30 feet if you continue doing Valsalva while you're free diving. I'm also going to explain why Valsalva doesn't generate enough force and then compare that to Frenzel, which generates way more force. I'm also going to discuss hands-free because sometimes people get some questions, a little bit of confusion about what that is. All right, let's talk about the Valsalva method of equalization. And I would say, generally speaking, it's going to be the most common used method of equalization. It's definitely most scuba divers use the Valsalva. And one of the reasons that is because one, it works fine for scuba. And two, scuba instructors, that's the way we teach everyone. When I used to teach scuba, I would teach Valsalva because it works, and I didn't know what the heck Frenzel was, so I just taught Valsalva. Now, Valsalva is also very simple to teach, right? So if I've got a young kid in the class and he doesn't know how to equalize his ear, I say, hey, little Johnny, can you equalize your ears? Okay, can you pinch your nose? Now blow your nose. And then, they feel that pressure in the ears, right? It's super simple. It's the pinch and blow technique, okay? So here's what's happening with Valsalva. You're taking the air that's in your lungs. You're using your chest, your ribs, your diaphragm, your stomach to compress that air. Your throat is open, right? And so when you compress, that air is able to go up through the throat and into the ears and equalize our ears, right? That's what's going on with Valsalva. Now let's look at the Frenzel method of equalization. Frenzel method is very different. The Frenzel method, the throat is shut, and you're taking the air that's in your mouth and you're pushing it into the ears using your tongue and your throat. All right, so two completely different methods of equalizing. All right, so let's take a look at what happens to Valsalva when we scuba dive and why it works for scuba diving, right? So typical scuba diver goes down or descends in a head up, feet down position, like this. And they definitely go slower than free divers. Free divers are bombing down to depth. Scuba divers typically take a more leisurely, slower approach. So where does air naturally always want to go? Well, we know air naturally always wants to rise. So if I'm like this, head up, feet down, and the air wants to rise, where's it going to go? Right up to my head. How convenient. Right where I need it, into my ears. Now, what's happening to the size of your lungs every time you take a breath off that regulator? Your lungs fully expand. So I would argue from a physiological standpoint, you're pretty darn similar to a scuba diver right now. Aren't you head up, feet down watching this video? Yeah. Don't your lungs fully expand every time you take a breath? Yeah, right? This is why it's so easy to equalize on scuba because of these two conditions, right? This is why I hear scuba divers say, Ted, I'm not worried about equalizing, for free diving. Look, I equalize so easily. I don't even need to pinch my nose. I just wiggle my jaw. I swallow, I yawn. It's just super easy. Yeah, on scuba. Right? Because it's way easy to equalize on scuba. Right? So let's compare that to free diving. Now, instead of head up, feet down, we're like this. Feet here, head here. Where does the air want to go? up to our feet. Where do we need it? Down here by our head, right? So that's a problem. The air wants to go the wrong way. Secondly, what's happening to the size of your lungs as you're descending? Right? As a free diver, your lungs are getting smaller, 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 the deeper that you go. So you have less and less air to equalize with, and it's harder to move the air where you need to because it doesn't want to go where you want it. It wants to go the other direction. It almost goes up to your fins, right? So this is why it's so much more difficult to equalize via Valsalva if you're free diving. In fact, this is why it limits you to about 15 or really no more than 30 feet. Because by the time you get to 30 feet, your lung volume is in half. So if you're using Valsalva, you have half the air that you would normally, right? And you're having to push it the wrong way. All right, so let me explain why Valsalva generates less force than Frenzel. So here's the analogy I use. Imagine you've got a 40-gallon trash can, right? You know, one of the big ones, right? And you know, about waist high. So imagine I fill that 40-gallon trash can up with water, completely full. Valsalva is like trying to wrap your arms around that trash can and squeeze really hard to shoot the water up in the air, right? So you're going to grab that trash can, you're going to squeeze as hard as you can. Is that water going to shoot up into the air? Nope. It might, you know, trickle over the sides, yeah, but it's not going to shoot up into the air, right? That's what Valsalva is like. You've got all your muscles, your ribs, your stomach, all this sort of stuff, and it's trying to compress that air and push it way up into the ears. Frenzel is like grabbing your water, grabbing your hand, putting it in that water, filling your hand up with water and going and shooting it across the room. Right? Because Frenzel, you've got the air in this tight position and you learn how to squeeze it just right, and you can generate way more force than you can with Valsalva, right? So this is why Frenzel generates so much more force than Valsalva. Now, to make matters more confusing, your brain thinks Valsalva is stronger. Right? So here's what I see a lot. When I see in classes and I see people that are struggling to learn Frenzel in the beginning, maybe their first day in the ocean, they go down, maybe they get stuck a little bit, and because their ears don't work, they can't get them to clear, the brain says, hey, equalize harder, that'll fix it. And so then they use Valsalva, which, as I've said multiple times, doesn't work past 15 or 30 feet. So take a look. You tell me, which equalization method looks stronger? Which method looks like it would absolutely pop those ears? So here's Valsalva. And here's Frenzel. Which method looks more powerful? Valsalva, for sure, man. It looks like, man, he's really cranking those equalizations. That's for sure going to pop the ears, right? But as I've said, it doesn't. Generates less force, doesn't work past 15 or 30 feet. So the issue is when people struggle to equalize, their instinct is to bear down really hard and do Valsalva. And as I'll say over and over again, that just doesn't work, right? That's why we got to be doing the Frenzel method of equalization. Now, I'll bring up this idea of hands-free. Hands-free equalization is a very small percent of the people can do it. I would say 5%, 5%, probably more closer to 5. People that can just, they don't ever need to pinch their nose while they're free diving. They can just open their eustachian tubes and equalize their ears, right? So Mandy, a friend of mine, she can hands-free equalize. And I remember asking her, well, how do you do that, Mandy? And she said, well, how do you blink your eyes? She goes, I just open them. Right? So for those that can do it, that's awesome. But very small percent of the population, very difficult skill to actually try to learn. In my opinion, in most cases, it's not even worth the effort. It takes months and months of time to try to figure it out. Now, some scuba divers, because scuba is so easy to equalize on, they can hands-free on scuba, and therefore they think they can hands-free on free diving. They find that they can't because it's just much more difficult to equalize hands-free on freediving than it is versus scuba. All right, so here's the deal. If you're a freediver and you want to be able to easily and effortlessly, dive past 15 or 30 feet, pinch the nose, equalize, no problem, you got to be doing Frenzel. Well, okay, not technically. If you're cool with diving to 40 or 50 feet at a 30-degree angle, you can get away with doing Valsalva, right? So when you go at those angles, you can use inferior techniques. Now, let's be honest, if we want to get down to 40 or 50 feet, it's going to take way much more time and waste energy if you're going down at a 45 or 30-degree angle. That's crazy. We want to go down straight like a laser, right? Now, I know a spearfisherman that he can spearfish in 50 foot, only does Valsalva. And the way he does it is he free dives down, and then once he can't equalize his ear, he turns around, head up, feet down, clears, then goes back down, kick, and then he can't clear anymore. And then he turns around, head up, feet down, clears his ear, and then talk about inefficient, right? No, we don't want to do that. If you want to be able to go down straight like a laser, right, you want to be doing Frenzel. Of all my years of teaching and all the stuff I've seen in the water, I think the deepest, maybe I've seen someone be able to Frenzel to 40 foot, right? And of course it hurts and all this sort of stuff. So I'm just telling you, if you want to equalize easily, effortlessly while free diving, you want to be doing Frenzel, not Valsalva. So I want you guys to watch the next video, which will be video number 2. And that's going to be allow you to diagnose which one you're doing. Are you doing Valsalva or are you doing Frenzel? See you there.